Hey there folks, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be reviewing Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright guys, so right off the bat I'm going to tell you this is not one of my favorite movies in the franchise. I found it very hard to get through this most recent time. I've watched it a bunch of times when I was a little kid, a lot younger, but this is the first time that I've really watched it, paid close attention to what I was watching. And as my feelings and my opinions on the franchise have grown and developed, for me to basically go to this one side where I really only care about the original two and H2O as an exception, because I just have a thing for H2O and I have a video explaining why. But a lot of the other movies in the franchise I just am not the biggest fan of. I see some of the things that they do. For some cases I can really get into it and I can enjoy it, like Halloween Ends. It's been very refreshing to be able to watch that movie 3 times and enjoy each one of the times. But for some reason, for something like Halloween Kills, I watch the beginning of it and it becomes very frustrating. Or for an example like this movie, it's been very frustrating. Or Halloween 6, some of the things in it are frustrating. However, I can find the positives in a lot of the movies. And I do want to make it very clear that I'm not trying to disrespect anybody or anybody's opinion or people who worked on these movies. That is not my intention. Just giving you my feelings on the movies, and I try to be positive about it as possible. Just, you know, there's no reason to be super overly negative or hateful towards these things. But getting right into it, unfortunately my list is mostly just not a lot of stuff that I liked. I apologize for that. There's not a whole lot in this movie that I can really grasp for to things that I do like. But getting right into it, Jamie and Michael's connection. In my Halloween 2 review, my Halloween 2 Rob Zombie review, I mentioned how I think that film did the Michael and Laurie connection better than this film did the Jamie and Michael connection. This movie, it was really only used to find Michael. It was a plot point. It was a way for Jamie and the other characters to find Michael, to locate him, or to help save people, even though that really doesn't happen. It wasn't really utilized that well. The way that it's utilized in Halloween 2, it's almost like they have this shared connection, Laurie and Michael, because they come from the same place. They both are, they're both messed up in the head from birth, something like that. That's kind of what they're going for. That, you know, they see the same visions, and when Michael's eating dog, it's almost implied that that's what Laurie tastes when she's eating that pizza, and that's at least the way that I looked at it, and I thought that was very interesting, whereas in this movie, it just comes out of nowhere because it wasn't in the last one, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me, and it wasn't utilized very well. It wasn't utilized in an interesting way. They just used it to communicate, for Jamie to communicate where Michael is, but it's never really done properly. Besides Cookie Woman, you know, that was really the only time it was really utilized properly. And again, Danielle Harris was wasted in this movie. She didn't really get to act. In 4, she's really, really good, and I just watched 4, and I'm very, very surprised in how much I really enjoyed that movie, and I will be getting into that, because I didn't think I was going to like it as much. Like I said, I really just kind of started to appreciate just the first 2 and H2O, so I was very surprised to see how much that I really liked Halloween 4 after watching it with fresh eyes again. But in this movie, Danielle Harris was 100% wasted. I think out of all the Halloween movies she's been in, this movie is definitely where she's wasted the most. She doesn't have really anything to do. She's got barely any lines. She's got just, her whole character doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You go from ending 5, or go from ending 4 as well as you did, and you go to this, you back up and you're like, oh no, we're not going to do that, you know, we're not going to go that step. If the franchise ended with Halloween 4, I think it would have been very, very ballsy and something really interesting to do. And I point to a recent Dave McRae post where he talked about how the first 2 films and the 4th is almost like the Loomis trilogy, and how things go full circle, and now this little girl has been possessed with the evil. So I thought that was a pretty interesting way of looking at it, and I'm sure he said that in his videos before, and I've probably watched them and I just don't remember, but that really is kind of true. If the franchise ended with Halloween 4, it would have been really something. If Halloween 3, you can keep Halloween 3's existence, but maybe if you just didn't call Halloween 4, you gave it just Halloween and then the subtitle, and you was looked at as that was the trilogy, I think that would have been a really powerful set of movies in terms of its overarching story. But moving on, there's another character in this movie that has been wasted, which is Rachel. Rachel, she was a really, really good character in Halloween 4, and these are all different things that people already know about. Whether you like Halloween 5 or not, I'm sure most of you can agree with some of the things that I'm saying here, is that Rachel was 100% wasted in this movie. She was a great character in the previous one. She was a great final girl. She did a really good job in that movie. In this movie, she's just there for like 12 minutes, and it's just no fun. Another character that was introduced into this movie is Tina. Not a big fan of Tina. I find her very annoying. I like her boyfriend Mike, though. He should have been in the movie longer. He's probably the best part of this entire movie. You want to play? That's like the only thing I remember from this movie all the time. You want to play? I love that line. I love that character. He's hilarious. I don't know why, but I think he's great. Mike should have been in the movie longer, and I stand by that. However, Tina is not a very good character in my opinion. She doesn't really do anything in the movie other than be dumb, and I'll explain why in one of my future points here. That Tina is just dumb. She's annoying. She doesn't need to be in this movie. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the actress or disrespectful to anybody, but she doesn't need to be here. It should have just been Rachel. That's all there is to it. Anyway, moving on to The Mask. The Mask isn't that good. It's got long hair. It looks completely different than the Halloween 4 mask. It's not even sculpted to resemble. It's not even sculpted to resemble the William Shatner mask. It was sculpted after, I believe the man who sculpted it after his own face. I think that's the story. I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to brush up on my knowledge on that. And there's actually something that I noticed about the Halloween 5 mask after my most recent viewing of Halloween 5 today, which I think is very interesting, and I'll probably go into it in another video that I plan on doing, but there's something I noticed about it that I don't think I've ever heard anybody mention before, so that's kind of interesting. But the Halloween 5 mask, I'm not a fan of it. I don't like them using stockings to hide the mask, or hide the eyes. Don Shanks is Michael Myers. Not the biggest fan of him. I don't like that he walks around like this the entire time. I don't know where that came from and why people do that, but it just bothers me that people walk around and this has become Michael Myers' thing. Why is Don Shanks standing like this the entire time? Was that direction that he was giving? Is that something that he's went on to do himself? Because there's a lot of different Michael Myers actors that were just told to they weren't given any direction. Nick Castle wasn't given any direction really at all. A lot of the kind of quirks that Michael Myers has, that was all Nick Castle. Dick Warlock wasn't given really any direction at all. Halloween 4 with George P. Wilbur, I'm not entirely sure, but I don't know what this is. I don't like this. Why is he standing around, walking around like this? When he's like 20 feet away from what's going on, he's standing here like this. I don't like that. And then, leading into that, again, I don't think this is really Don Shanks' fault. It's more the way that the movie was written. Is Michael not being noticed. I can't tell you how many times in this movie Michael stands in broad daylight. He stands clear as can be, and characters are looking in his direction, and they don't see him. The dog Max is barking at Michael. Rachel looks at the trees right by her house. You can see him clear as day. She doesn't say anything. Tina sees him standing in the living room. Granted, he moves over, but you can still see his arm, and then he moves while she's looking at him. She doesn't see that. He's standing out in the open when Rachel comes downstairs. He's standing out in the open underneath the trees. He's standing by trees. In other scenes, too. And in the barn scene, Tina's literally looking at him move around, and just nobody sees him. In the original movie, Michael was standing in weird places. He was standing out in the open. He was standing in broad daylight. But the characters noticed him. Tommy noticed him when he was standing across the street. Laurie noticed him when he was standing in broad daylight. The characters noticed when Michael was standing out in the open, unless it was nighttime and they weren't supposed to, right? But in this movie, he'll stand out in broad daylight and people will be looking at him but then not see him. It's very annoying. Now, I can understand why they probably didn't do it so they would notice him, because in the original movie, Michael wasn't a threat yet. If somebody was like, Michael Myers escaped the sanitarium, nobody would know who that was, other than the people who knew what happened back in 1963. He wasn't the threat that he had become in Halloween 5. So if somebody noticed him, they wouldn't know that's Michael Myers. They would just think it's some weirdo. Who's this weirdo watching me? right? And Halloween 5, if somebody sees him, then they know that's Michael Myers. So then the authorities can be called and people know who it is, and the chaos ensues because people are going to try to get him arrested or taken care of. You know what I'm trying to say, right? So obviously it was written in a way so characters wouldn't notice him, but he can still do the things that he did in Halloween 1, which is stand out in the open and stalk like a weirdo. But in this movie, it doesn't make any sense because characters will be looking at him and characters will be looking at him and not see him. It doesn't make any sense. And another thing is the Myers house. The Myers house, oh my god. The Myers house looks nothing like the Myers house. It's a cool house in and of itself. It looks cool. It's got wood boarded up all over the place. And this last time I watched it, I noticed the little Cult of Thorn logo. And I also noticed in Halloween 5 that the Cult of Thorn has like 2 dots on it. I never noticed that before. In Halloween 6, that's not a part of it. In Halloween 5, on the wall and also on the Man in Black's wrist, you can see the Cult of Thorn logo with the 2 dots next to it. I didn't realize that was a part of it. I don't remember if it's on Michael's hand because that was before I noticed it. I'd have to go back and check if it's on Michael's hand. I don't remember if it is or not, but the Myers house doesn't look that good, or in the sense that it doesn't look accurate. There's just not a whole lot of this movie that I can really appreciate. Billy's kind of funny. I like him. Loomis is just out of his mind insane in this movie. The scene where he's literally like this close to Danielle's face screaming, "Where is he? Tell me everything you know." Right? It had me laughing. It had me dying. So of course Donald Pleasence boosts this movie up and raises it up more than it deserves. But yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't able to be overly positive about this movie. It's just there's not a whole lot for me to grasp onto. Again, walking away from the movie like I was at the theater. After watching this, my favorite thing about it was probably Mike. Like, I'm being honest, he was pretty funny. There's not a whole lot else about the movie that I appreciate or that I really care for, so I apologize for that. If you guys did like the video, hit the like button if you want to subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. That would be greatly appreciated, and of course, until next time, true believers.